Hello and welcome to Editor's Pick, the War Elephant podcast. We have our founder and leader, Jon Davis, with us for our official episode 1. So let's hand over the reins to him for a bit.
All right. Ian, thank you so much for doing all this. This is such an exciting opportunity to have a podcast like this. So yeah, this podcast is it's totally their creation. I was just only hearing about it. They said, hey, we really want to do this podcast. And I'm like, that sounds like a fantastic idea. Well, what they're going to be doing is covering some of the highlights from every week, some of the biggest things that get shared around the War Elephant community, just big things going on in the world that we wanted to talk about in a podcast format. It's going to be their show. It's going to be the editor's show. Hopefully I'll be able to join them as often as I can, but it'll be other members of the War Elephant community, some of our contributors, some of our other staff, guests if we can have them. We're really hoping for a really exciting presentation from this new podcast experience. And to you guys, to Ian and Kristine, I am just absolutely floored with all the work that you guys have done. It's a fantastic product that you guys are putting out, and I can't wait to get started with it. Not just for today's show, which I'm really excited. We're talking about some Chinese government nonsense. We're talking about Netflix nonsense. The new fighter jet, which the Air Force came out, which is like the exact opposite of nonsense. That's amazing. But then back to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who tragically passed away, and that's what everybody's talking about, and the nonsense associated with that. So I'm looking forward to a whole lot of good talk about nonsense, but also I'm really looking forward to this amazing new product that we're launching to try to help everybody in the War Elephant community get better integrated into all the stuff we're doing. So thank you guys so much for putting this together. Thank you so much for having me. And now I just want like a lot of people know me, but I want everybody to get to know you guys. So you guys go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Hi, thank you so much, Jon. I'm really excited that we had you. I know a lot of people know who you are because of your extensive writing and your previous podcasting. I am Kristine Carlson, the editor-in-chief for War Elephant. We have grown beyond being just the blog of Jon the War Elephant to an entire media operation. And I am kind of in charge of all of the various aspects of finding content for War Elephant, managing our multiple writers, our editors, and the various social media platforms. We're always looking for more people to be involved in this enterprise. So if you're interested, drop a note in the notes and let us know. We have an energetic community on Discord, and we'd be interested in having more people aboard. Ian?
And I'm Ian. I am one of the editors. I work a lot with content push out and strategy and do a little bit of writing, but mostly trying to encourage other partners and contributors to get the best out of their ideas and find their style. I'm really excited about the ability to open conversations, because Kristine and I are going to be the drivers of this show, but we really want to open this up to our contributors and our members, and hopefully to people who have a different perspective, because I think that really getting a conversation going and bringing people into a big tent conservatism where you can disagree but still find a productive way forward, both as a community and as policies that we can advocate for and elucidate and find problems with so that we can fix them. I really think that is what we need. We need more than just content. We need community that gets things done in our own communities, our own physical communities. So Jon wanted to get us started with a further discussion of what the Chinese government's doing. They're doing so much, but the episode 0 talked about their oppression of the Uighur people specifically. And the U.S. government finally decided to imposed some very serious trade restrictions on them, because specifically linked to that oppression and slave labor. So, John, what were your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, like you guys had that dry run episode last week, trying to figure out the podcast, and that was great. But like I wanted to really pick up on a lot of the conversation you guys were talking about. One thing that I'm really hopeful that this is going to bring a lot more attention to everything going on in China. It's like throughout most of our, like all three of us are pretty similar in age, but throughout all of our lives, China has been looked at as, it started off as just a country with a lot of people that nobody really talked about, into the this economic powerhouse. But as it became this economic powerhouse, it did so through absolutely taking away the rights of so many people, just as the entire population was sort of serving the Chinese Communist Party in whatever aims they had. And I mean, the Americans were fine with this because we got our cheap products that were made. We go along and look the other way on so many things. But it's like now it seems like a lot of things, and whether we're talking about the protesters from Hong Kong, whether we're talking about the underground Chinese churches, the Christian churches that are forced underground, whether we're talking about now with the Uyghurs, who I'm trying to choose my words on this, because you don't want to sound like I'm not happy that people are going through bad times, but I feel good that people are really starting to see this in a big way. And Kristine, before the podcast, we were talking about, there's some recent news on that development that I'm looking forward to her sharing. But it's like, you had China, which, the way they solve problems is completely antithetical to what Americans would like, we would even consider possible. Like whenever they started dealing with the COVID, the COVID crisis that started up, they were locking people inside their homes to try to handle the outbreak. And that's just beyond anything that we would imagine. But whenever you start talking about terrorism, whenever we were talking about how do we handle 9/11, how do we handle the outbreak of terrorism that was spreading not only from the Middle East, but into Europe with refugees and with other people, China just decided that the entire people, like all the Uyghur people who, they are an Islamic minority in China, they just decided to look at them all as a potential threat, that the entire thing might be similar to Tibet, similar to the way that the Chinese Christians are looked at, that they're a threat to the Chinese Communist Party and that they're a threat to civility. So then they just did all the things that you're just not supposed to do in this century, all the way up to forced enslavement, all the way up to these re-education centers, all the way up into every 1984 dystopian imagination that you can get to. So that's finally starting to become an international conversation among more than just like policy wonks and all these other people that are in on that. And I don't know, like I'm hoping that this doesn't get overshadowed in whatever current event happens. Like I hope that people keep talking about it. So that's why I'm happy to keep talking about it. But Kristine, before the podcast, you were sharing some information that just came out. What was that?
Well, this last week, on September 20th, the Trump administration said their sanctions on the Chinese companies in the Xinjiang region could impact over $250 million. I think actually that's a lowball estimate, given how deeply entrenched in the American economy the Chinese companies really are for production and labor. Right now, shipments based on suspicion that they violate U.S. human trafficking, child labor, and other human rights abuses are being held, but it's really only 5 companies, production companies, that are being held up right now. There could be a broader regional ban, and a lot of companies are starting to consider seriously their entanglements with any production in the Xinjiang region because of the widespread use of slave labor. For example, H&M, a Swedish clothing company, announced this week that they are completely terminating all production of clothing in the entire region, and they are looking at terminating any cotton produced there as well. This might be a start of a much broader pullout of manufacturing from that area in order to avoid these kind of entanglements. And those entanglements are very significant. more than 83 multinational corporations do significant amounts of manufacturing in those regions, including Nike, Adidas, Microsoft, Samsung. Uh, in fact, they know exactly what's going on. Apple's CEO Tim Cook in 2017 went to a factory and toured it that is known to use Uyghur slave labor.
Yeah, what I'm really wondering about a lot of this is, like at what point are consumers going to actually start doing something about it? Because I mean, all this is great. Like we can talk about it all day long, but if the consumers don't actually say no, it doesn't matter how cheap it is, doesn't matter how nice it is. If they don't start demanding things, then I wonder if it's just going to be a fact. Is this just a fact that we talk about, and a couple of months later, we are doing nothing but talking about the election. We're doing nothing but talking about whatever is going on. We're doing nothing about talking about it. And then this is just a thing that we're all reminded of 2 years from now, whenever some new thing happens. So, I mean, like you actually surprised me with all the companies that are involved in this, and the fact that like this does touch on the entire American economy. What I'm actually curious about is, like what alternatives could there be? Like one thing that I speculated on a couple of years ago, that if our relationship with China really deteriorated, would we be looking at Africa? Because like a lot of people are looking at African countries as like the next developing nation for small manufacturing goods, for a lot of stuff like that. We're also looking at, here in the United States, looking at 3D printing. Like I didn't know this, but there's a really, really good series of talks about how 3D printing could make the United States completely independent from anyone else in the world. We reached oil independence not that long ago, and if we could get to the point that we can replace our low-paid, low-skilled labor with robotics, then that would make us functionally independent from the world. And at that point, we no longer have a reason to sail our navy across the world to make sure that nobody else goes and starts fighting. We have no need for a lot of the other entanglements that we're involved in. And I kind of just wonder, is this something that we just ignore, or is it something that might be the start of something really, really huge that America actually gets out of China?
I think, John, you made a good point. Consumers do have to make choices. They're going to have to make individual purchasing choices. For example, they've now linked face mask production in China to Uyghur labor, widespread Uyghur labor. And of course, everyone's buying and wearing face masks. Now, I just bought a bunch of face masks, but where did I buy them from? I bought some of them from India, actually. Fantastic masks. I bought several of them from Etsy from people here in America who are making them. In my hometown, there's a vacuum cleaner company that's making face masks.
That's actually smart. Somebody needs to send that guy a cake just for being innovative.
He employs 50 people full time making face masks now.
Oh, wow.
He used to only have 5 employees. Now he's got 50. So that's pretty amazing. And it comes down to individual consumer choices. I need a piano bench. I've been looking for one for a while, and I knew I didn't want to buy one in China. I just finally found the piano bench that I'm going to be buying, and it's made in Texas.
There you go.
Well, a big thing that people don't often talk about is entertainment, both production and consuming. And this is particularly important, as we saw in the release of the Mulan movie, and the failure there. And I think that Disney is finally starting to realize that, due to a combination of factors, including just a wider awareness of the Chinese government's perfidy and the unreliability of their markets, they get less money, even though there's more people who are spending money from the Chinese market. And they're not stupid, and they're also motivated to work against Western interests in a lot of ways. So in circumstances like the Mulan movie, which is theoretically made to pander to that audience, they rejected it wholesale. And Judd Apatow even mentioned that we need to stop turning a blind eye to what the Chinese government does just because we can get a lot of money from them. So I think there is signs that Hollywood, which is a huge player in the power China has in our country, might be turning.
Could you recap for the viewers what it was that what exactly was the link with Mulan and what was going on with China? I mean, like we all know that it was filmed there, but there was also like that. I don't want to botch the details on it. I know that you've spoken about it, so I want to give you that one. But what exactly was it that Disney did? There was something in the credits about where they were filming. What was that about?
So there were two major incidents. The first one was during the Hong Kong protest. The lead actress, the one who plays Mulan, spoke out and called the protesters basically terrorists or thugs. Now, this is not very surprising. Actors in China basically live in a reality show where the consequences of getting voted off the island is being put in prison. They've actually disappeared the most popular stars in their country for months for minorly offending the party. So,
I had no idea about that. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. And then a big thing is they filmed in Xinjiang, the province where they have the concentration camps where they're keeping the Uighur people. And they thanked the police authority of Xinjiang, the people who are doing it. They didn't have to. There's plenty of other places that have that kind of scenery, even not in China. But they made the choice to go there. They made the choice to thank the people doing this. And it's egregious. It's just really blatantly being complicit in genocide.
Yeah, I don't know where all this is going to go. Like I said, like what Kristine was saying, it's really going to come down to consumers, and I really hope that there's enough people out there making little podcasts like this that there's enough of a conversation, and that conversation lasts a while. Because China needs to update from this idea of how they survived after 1940. And they need to update to a world that has some code of ethics, some rules, some common decency. Because it's like at the end of the day, you know what? If you wanted to be a complete isolationist society, whatever, do whatever you want. But at the end of after that, we bought the products. So I mean, we bought the products. So in my mind, we're complicit. And it's like there's a point where I don't want to be complicit with things that I don't feel good about. Obviously, I can't know every single thing that takes place throughout the entire supply chain. Like iPencil, that's a brilliant essay, talks about how we all can't know everything that goes into even something as simple as a pencil. But it's like at some point, we do live in the information age that tells us as much as we need to know about things as is possible. And eventually, you're going to find out some things about your favorite products that are really unpleasant. You don't want to have anything to do with anymore. In saying that, I kind of feel like that would be a good point to flow into the next topic. What do you guys think?
Well, I wanted to add one thing,
Okay,
John.
yeah, go ahead.
When Tiananmen Square really wasn't all that long ago. And so this behavior of China isn't out of character or new.
No.
And
it's like they've always been doing this.
I have a friend who was a witness to Tiananmen Square as a child. And a lot of people, when China started the economic reforms, really hoped that there would be personal freedom that followed. And it looks now like that hope was largely unbased. That the economic control is pretty strict in China. And they've managed to institute economic reforms that did not translate into freedom for the people. And that's extremely unfortunate for both China and the world. And I think that'll pretty much be all I have to say on the matter for today.
No, I'm good.
So John was referencing, we have some comments about Netflix, which we primarily talked about cuties, but there's been a recent revelation over the weekend that one of their, I think he's an actor, but a creative producer for one of their shows was arrested for child pornography production. And I just found out that they are airing a Polish, it's kind of hilarious, a Polish remake of 50 Shades of Grey, which is a Twilight remake, which is even worse. Like, these things just keep getting worse and worse, and Netflix just keeps promoting them and producing them.
It's like, if you want to dig yourself out of the hole, you got to put down the shovel. You know? Oh, yeah, no. So like you guys, what you guys were talking about last time, you mentioned a lot of good things on Cuties, but it's like Netflix. I really don't know if Netflix is suffering from this in the way that a lot of people want from a mass boycott, but I feel like a lot of people are expressing the fact that it's like they're done with Netflix. You know, like, we're in that category. I told Jenny, I was like, look, we've already paid for this month. We've already paid for it. So watch your organization show. We'll watch the last of our cooking show. I will dearly miss Zumbo and Sugar Rush. We will very much miss those shows, but they won't. They just aren't worth the feeling of it. It's like, after you see Cuties, and you guys were talking about how it was that a lot of people communicated that it was not promoted well, that it was marketed wrong. But it's like you guys were also very good. I was glad that you guys were both like, but no, it's like, you can't just market this well. It's like, it's not a good product, and like, on the surface. Kristine, you were mentioning some really good things about how it intentionally. I'll let you explain how the objectification works, but the way you described it, the both of you. I don't want to talk about what you guys said. I just want you to say it again, because you guys were really on point with describing how artists think about movies and how movies are made and how nothing is an accident in a movie. So like I just want you guys to talk about that for a second, because I feel like I'm going to botch it. But yeah, go ahead with that, because you did great.
Well, the film deliberately focused in on parts of the girls in a lot of the scenes. There was a lot of it that was. One of the things I didn't bring up was that this film was more or less a coming of age in a way that kind of made it into Lord of the Flies for girls in 2020. Okay. And I told Ian when we talked about the thing, if you filmed Lord of the Flies and included everything that was in the book, it would be a deeply disturbing story.
Yep.
And yet it still is a story that is worth telling and has merit and resonance. So that doesn't make it a bad story in and of itself. But some of the choices that they made with their actresses were of more than dubious value, both in terms of what they exposed the children to and what they forced us to watch as audiences. And those weren't choices that necessarily had to be made. An argument is being said that, well, art is supposed to make you uncomfortable. That may be so, but uncomfortable doesn't mean you actually exploit children or force people to look at children as sexual objects. And what they did with the way that they framed many of the scenes was they forced you to look at the children in ways that a predator would look at the child. They're retraining your brain, literally retraining your brain to look at the children in this way, in a way that no healthy adult ever would. The feminist concept for this is the male gaze. I don't have a better term for it. We all know that is what happens.
Well, the more neutral term is gaze theory, because it can be used in regards to objectifying men as well from a female perspective.
And it really focused in and turned the children into a collection of sexual body parts for the viewing reaction of the audience. And that is deeply concerning.
And what's worse to me is that there are scenes in which they focus on the reactions of the people watching the girls. And they're still really uncomfortable. But they could have done that for the entire movie and refused to force the girls to dance and refused to use the cameras to focus on the girls in these ways and gotten their point across. So they had the tools. They demonstrated they had the tools to make this film with the point they wanted to convey, And yet they decided, no, we must be free to show and partake in the stuff that we're theoretically against. And
Yeah,
I think that's dishonest.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Kristine.
Yeah, and a large degree of this has to do specifically with camera angles. A large degree of this problem, because as people have pointed out, the choreography itself is being done by a lot of dance groups, although they took it to places that were more extreme than most dance shows are going. There are things that those children did that you wouldn't choreograph children to do. Even in most dance shows, they're saying, well, it was like Dance Moms. I've watched Dance Moms because my mom loved it, and they never did a lot of that choreography. I've seen a lot of dance shows and they've done a lot of theater, and you don't do a lot of those things, and you certainly don't use those kind of camera angles on children.
Yeah, well, like I like going back to that Lord of the Flies example that you were talking about, and it's like it was a good example, because it's like Lord of the Flies is supposed to be disturbing. Like, it talks about what would society be like in a world literally ruled by nothing but adolescent boys, and it is absolutely horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying. And I mean, like, that was the point. But if you were to make a movie about that, you could still tell that story, and it would be extreme. It would be uncomfortable. But it's like, would you tell that movie but make the death of another kid look cool? Like, would you try to make it look fun and interesting? That's what it felt like, the scenes that I watched of Cuties was that, they tried to make these things that are supposed to make us uncomfortable, supposedly. No, it's not. It's sexy, and they're empowered, and they're liberated. And it's like, it failed. And so many people were talking about that. The people who hadn't watched the movie were saying that it was this horrible thing. But then you find out that most of the people saying that had not watched the movie either. They're just defending it based on what comes off as this excuse down the road. And it's like, maybe the original writer of it, maybe she really saw this as a big problem that needed to be addressed. So she wanted to write a screenplay about it. Perhaps that's all true. Like, I believe it could be true enough. But it's like, the actual thing that came out really, really, really seemed to be glorifying the sexuality of children. And it seemed to be trying to have, especially whenever you look at like the rest of the marketing shows that it was like that she was rebelling against her conservative family, against the traditional values and all this. And I'm like, that they would actually use those words that she was lashing out against traditional and conservative families. And it's like, okay, so it feels like one, people were being baited. It feels like they were trying to bait a conservative reaction, which, you know what? Okay, I'm going to be the bigot who hates women because I am against children dancing like this. Okay, fine. Put me in that box. I am okay with that. It was like, those terms are acceptable to me. But it's like, I do like the Lord of the Flies example, because it's like, you can tell that story without teaching children how to murder. You can teach that story without focusing on how gooey can you make that scene. You can do all these things and actually send the message. It felt like they failed to do the thing they said they were trying to do to such a degree that it came off like I'm reminded of when I was teaching middle school, and you had a kid who was just caught red-handed, like so caught. And then they come up with the stupidest excuse they can later. And it's like, no, like, I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying it. You got caught, and now you're trying to apologize your way out of it. You're trying to say that it wasn't your fault. I think a lot of people aren't buying it. And it's like this leaving the topic of Cutie specifically, it's like, this has been such a long pattern with Netflix that, like, I've felt guilty about having Netflix for a long time. Like, I remember specifically the point where it turned over from just annoyance that, like, it felt like all of their big content was targeting groups that I feel like targeting groups that look a lot like me. That share my faith, that share my background, that share a lot of things, whether it was like Orange is the New Black, really had a lot of hateful things to say about veterans. Like, if you look on that was a really hateful depiction of veterans. But then, what was it? You had Kevin Spacey spitting on Christ. That was a very interesting one. But then the moment where it really got to where it was like, no, I feel really bad about this, was 13 Reasons Why. And it's like, okay, talking about teen suicide, yeah, I guess, okay, it's an important issue. We should talk about it. But then there was evidence of it. There was evidence that within weeks after 13 Reasons Why came out, there was a spike in kids Googling, how do I kill myself? Or versions of how do I commit suicide? There's an answer I wrote years ago. I wrote an answer years ago, just answering the question of what could kill you so fast you wouldn't even feel it. And a lot of them were these off-the-wall answers, like a gamma ray burst that would just blow up the world so fast nobody would even know what happened. But I just answered, if you shoot somebody in a very particular way, because this is stuff that I was trained in the Marines, you won't even feel it. You won't even know. Nobody will notice. And then I had a kid from Turkey who he was a gay kid. He was a gay kid who didn't want to come out to his father. They were an Islamic family. He messaged me and asked me what the chances were of him missing. And I was like, hold on, kid. Oh. And so I talked with him for 2 hours. And I mean, we were just messaging. I think it's all still on Quora. Just some of my messages. But I was just talking him off the ledge there. But it was disturbing, and that event really disturbed me for a while. Knowing that something I made, that I was just writing a scientific answer about how guns work. That's all. But then knowing that my answer almost influenced one person, and for all I know, maybe has influenced others. I don't know. But then after that, seeing that Netflix made this thing that millions and millions of people had watched, and that many kids had researched, how do I kill myself? And it's absolutely linked to it. You can see the timelines. It's absolutely linked to it. It's then they made a season 2. And it's okay, I don't think a lot of people would think this show will encourage kids to commit suicide. Maybe some of them were like, how will it not? And, it just it started becoming really guilty for me to have a Netflix account after that, this whole huge pattern of Netflix's behavior, and what comes off as recklessness, and what now is pointing to, it's not just that you hate my values. It's not just that you hate people like me. It's that you seem to really hate children. You seem to be the company that is actively encouraging children to sexualize themselves and then kill themselves. And it's I can't do this. I feel horrible having this account. So I understand why millions, perhaps not millions, but enough people that it's worth talking about are just getting done. And they're like me. I canceled our Netflix, and it's I get it. Maybe this won't touch their bottom line at all. Maybe this won't touch their stock price at all. But it's for me and my family, I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore.
Well, before your account ends, you should probably take a look at the Challenger documentary.
Oh, the what?
This came out.
Yeah.
The Challenger explosion documentary. They do still make some good things.
Yeah, no, it's I'll give you that. It's I told Jenny, we paid for this month, get everything that you need out of the way. But even then, it's I hear that, and I think the same argument that I think about with Planned Parenthood. Only so much of what they do deals with abortion. I'm yeah, okay, fine. The Nazis only used 5% of their resources for the Holocaust. It's I agree with you, but it's that 5% is big enough that I'm done with the other 95. And
right.
Mostly peaceful content.
Mostly peaceful. There you go. It's mostly peaceful.
I can't say much. I'm not a television watcher. I don't know if you can tell what's going on behind me. What takes up most of my free time? It is not television.
Well, that's how me and Jenny connect at the end of the day. We now have 2 kids. We We both work all the time. So it's once the kids are in bed, that's our time, and half the time she passes out, and I feel bad for her. She passes out and goes to sleep. But it's that's our time to connect, is when we get to watch a show. And sometimes it'll be Scrubs or one of our other favorite shows. But I don't know. I just feel sad for Netflix, because I remember back when I was in college, they were the best company ever. I'd get that little disc in the mail with some documentary on some ancient empire that grew so big, and it was best ever. But it's No, we were talking about some things on the War Elephant teams about actually trying to encourage some evangelists. What was the word? What's the word I'm thinking? But like actual like people to promote the
Influencers?
well. Oh no,
Uh,
it's fine. It's fine. It's not really that important. But like talking
So what you're saying is
ambassador,
we need to talk to Abby Shapiro.
huh?
We need to talk to Abby
Yeah,
Shapiro.
there you go. But like having like brand advocates, people to go out and promote it. It was like I was totally that guy for Netflix, but now it's like, I just feel bad having it. I feel bad having kids, having daughters while having it. We're canceling it, and I understand why millions of other people did too. Probably not millions. Millions is probably an exaggeration, but I understand why so many of them did.
But it might turn into that. I mean, I gave up. I used to be a big gamer, and I loved playing. I was a huge World of Warcraft person. I played Overwatch. And we don't want to talk about how many hours of my life have been spent on those games. Blizzard, I was your girl. And then the Blitzchung thing came out where he spoke against he said free Hong Kong, and they took his title away and fired their announcers. I mean, to me, it was completely unacceptable. I canceled my account. I uninstalled. I've never been back.
Yeah. And no, I mean, it's like, I hope that Netflix rights their ship. I hope that they take the message, but it doesn't matter if they do, because they're not going to be selling it to our family for like, it's going to take way more effort. And I just don't think they're going to do it. But anyway.
Well, I was hoping we could move to our third topic, which is the fighter jet that John brought to our attention.
Yeah, well, actually, this came from a share. Let me look it up. Who actually shared this one? But it came through the feed. That's how I found out about it. So that was a totally cool thing. But Glenn Broderick, he shared this back on the 15th about how the Air Force have completely flown a jet that nobody knew was in development. And for people who have been following like the F-35, it is insane that they pulled this off. So typically what goes on is they'll talk about the needs for a next generation jet. And it's like, we're always aware that we have to constantly have a new generation, because whenever we put out something, everybody in the world then is trying to copy it or to defeat whatever systems it has. And they have the advantage because it's like, we did the product research. We did all the hard stuff. We had to invent everything. All you have to do is say, oh, okay, well, I think we could copy that based on whatever information gets out. And it's a lot easier for everybody down the road. Now, perfectly copying what we did, difficult. It's very difficult. You can look at whatever jets come out for Russia, for China, for Europe. Copying us is difficult, but it's not nearly as hard as making it at first. Things like the F-22, which is our most advanced fighter right now, that took several years of development, several years and a lot of dollars, and like people knew about it. People knew that it was coming out. The F-35 was a lot of people view it as a disaster. As far as the development cycle, I've always thought it was a really interesting plane. It has a lot of really great uses, but it took 10 years to develop. And if I'm going to be honest, it's like, we can blame my beloved Marine Corps for this. What it was that they wanted a single plane. They wanted a single plane that could be flown by the Air Force, by the Navy, or by the Marine Corps. The Air Force has a need.
I understand it's the VTOL that really.
Yeah, and like, I'll get into that. The Air Force has a need for planes that go really fast and really far. Really, they care more about speed because they can land in a lot of places. The Navy needs things that can go a long distance because they might not make it to a base if they don't have a lot of really good fuel efficiency. The Marines, they don't really care as much about a lot of that stuff. They just need to be able to land absolutely anywhere. They need to be able to land on a Marine Corps carrier, which is made for helicopters. They need to be able to land on just a little clearing in the woods somewhere. So they needed that vertical takeoff and landing. They needed that. And to do that in the same frame as all the other things was so difficult that it took 10 years and $1 trillion to come up with this plane. And it's like, it's a great plane, but a lot of us are kind of wondering, should the Marine Corps have just had their own thing? We probably would have done a whole lot of good if the Marine Corps just had their own thing. Which, now there's new technologies that are coming out, especially utilizing some different things. It is like, it probably would have been better to go that route. But the whole point was, it took $1 trillion and 10 years to put out the F-35, which is not superior to the F-22, which is older. But then we get this news coming out of the woodwork, talking about how there is now a new fighter jet that has been completely designed, completely like from the bottom up, 1 year, and nobody knew anything about it. And I was like, just seeing that information all by itself. Now we know virtually nothing about the plane. As far as what I know, this Kristine, you said this image came from Lockheed Martin?
Yes.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin put out something, so they and like 5 other contractors are involved in it. But the fact that they were able to put this out in so quick, so under the radar, no pun intended, but to put that out in under a year, it's like, this is a fascinating achievement. And it's like, I really, really want to know more about this. Because I mean, like, those of us in like the speculative technology for the military, which, like I wrote a book on the future of warfare. I wasn't expecting them to work on a next generation plane until like 2025. Like, I wasn't expecting any of that for us to start seeing anything. They said they've already flown the thing. And of course, that doesn't mean they're done. It just means that it's already been through a lot of the most important steps, and it's like it's on the back end of development. So this
compared to the
really
JSF, which is still in development,
right?
But we have a question from Tom Edwards about when the new fighter hits the market, or hits our military as a mainstream utility tool. Do you think that they're going to start selling off the JSF? I mean, we already have a lot of militaries that use a version of the JSF because it was a international development. But what do you think about them just sort of selling them off wholesale?
No, just selling them off. No, I mean, we'll have a lot of needs for it for a while, and it's like, you wouldn't put that much of an investment just to hand it over to someone else. We were talking about with China. I don't know, was that before the podcast that we were talking about that? Yeah, that was before. But it's like, you don't want to develop all this stuff just to hand it over to another country, even if like your friends, like even if you're friendly, because like we're friendly with Turkey, but they do a lot of stuff that we don't like. So it's like handing it off, even to like to Israel, to a lot of the European partners. I see them wanting to maintain that edge for several years before we start giving that technology out, before we start selling it off. It'll be a while that it stays ours.
John?
Yeah.
John, it came out in the Jerusalem Post this week that following...
Oh, you're not contradicting me already. Please don't.
Following the peace accord between the United Arab Emirates and Israel, the UAE was briefed security briefings on the F-35s, and it is believed that there are already talks in place for selling F-35s to both Israel and UAE.
Oh my!
Well, that was actually one of the big things I heard about them not really being super thrilled with Israel being part of the development, because they were kind of porous.
Okay, well, yeah, no, that would be interesting. Yeah, okay, now that's actually kind of an interesting one, because like anything dealing with the Middle East kind of throws what you're talking about into question, because it's like, are we talking about just typical selling technology, or are we talking about countering someone else in the region? Because it's like, if we ever empower someone in the Middle East, it's to make sure that someone else stays in check. Anything along the Arab Peninsula, it's because we don't like Iran. Anything that we're doing with Israel, is to keep a check on people like Saudi Arabia and Iran. So it's like that doesn't surprise me as much. No, I don't like it slipping in that direction, but it doesn't surprise me at all because we've been working with Sunni partners forever. Every time that Iran starts looking a little bit more threatening. So as far as releasing these jets over there, yeah, that doesn't surprise me as much. But as far as just making it a lot more available worldwide to a lot of our partners, no, there's not a strategic reason for it. There's not a strategic reason to let go of something. Then again, the F-35 is just simply not as advanced as the F-22. We're a lot more careful with the F-22. And I mean, we could talk about that for a while. It's not like it was botched. The F-35 just has a different mission than the F-22. Like the 22 is really interesting in that primarily what it's good for is going in completely undetected. Like say that like a major war starts tomorrow, against Kristine, but a major war just starts tomorrow. The F-22 is good at just going in, detecting all the radar stations, and just blasting each one out of the water. So the F-35, which is easier to see, it's still stealthy, but it's still easier to see, now has this huge alleyway to just go through and blast all the major technology on that route. So it's like I could see wanting to equip other nations with that, but the F-22, not so much.
And
So
also Switzerland is looking at buying F-35s.
Yeah, like I could see that, but as far as like wide scale distribution of it as a product, I don't know. It's gonna take some really good relationships for that to happen. Switzerland, they're pretty good. They're also really good at never getting to a fight, so whatever. But yeah, besides that.
Well, I kind of wanted to move on to our final topic of the night, which is the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As a community, we held off for a weekend, other than trying to honor her service, which we do disagree with her, though many of us did. She served honorably and well for decades, and that's worth honoring. And we hope that fellow conservatives will, in fact, join us in honoring her service and also in disagreeing with what she did respectfully. But John, I was hoping you'd sort of lead us off with some general thoughts about Justice Ginsburg.
Yeah. So, I mean, starting off, like whenever I was sitting at home and then I got the notification on my phone that she passed away. And it's like my immediate reaction. It's like, I'm just going to be honest because like I try to be open about my immediate reaction was like, oh, wow, this is such an opportunity that like the seat opened up. And then immediately I was slammed with that sense of, oh, wow, I just treated a human being dying as an opportunity. And like, I was just, it like for 1 second, I felt like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a thing that we could do something with, to turning the courts really, really in our favor to, yeah, a good person doesn't think this way. And so I tried to hop on to Quora to make sure that the news got shared. Like I shared it within 20 minutes. Now, what I was really impressed with, and this is thanks to the editors like you guys, I was actually beaten by 10 minutes thanks to you guys and Steve, who had already come up with a really good thing to say that mirrored. It was even the same link that I shared, but everybody sort of came to the same conclusion that it was like, this is a woman whose policy and philosophy most of us disagree with. There's nothing disrespectful in saying that, but I really, really, really have an admiration for anybody who serves who serves the United States and keeps the ship going. It's like I remember whenever Obama was leaving, people were saying, like what is it that the conservatives have to say about Barack Obama? It was like, look, I disagree with most of his policies, just about most of the things he said, but it's like America has to have a leader. Even if I don't agree with that leader, I support him. And I want to thank him for his service. If I ever got the chance to shake his hand, I would definitely shake his hand just to say thank you for your service. I disagreed with just about everything, but you still got to appreciate that service. And people who don't, I don't have a lot of respect for that. Now with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was a justice who has served for decades. And I mean, that it has been, Ian, just like you were saying, that has been honorable service. You don't have to agree with something to still acknowledge that it was honorable. For that, I sent out a message to all the contributors that, hey, everybody's talking about this, but it's very, very important that we show respect and not politicize something too quick. Now, it's like the political conversation couldn't stop just because I wanted it to. Like things have to get done, things have to be said. But as far as my platform, as far as the War Elephant, I wanted to have a moratorium on talking about the politics of it, at least until Monday. Like, let the weekend go. In part, that was because, like we should have respect. In part, it was because I felt so guilty about the first thing that I thought of was that, oh, this is good for my vision of America. And it was like, you shouldn't think that way. So I put out a moratorium to the conservatives not to talk about the political implications until Monday. That being said, it is Monday, so I would love to get into a conversation now about all of this, because I mean, wow, what a mess, and I mean, like, again, being respectful to Justice Ginsburg, or Chief Justice Ginsburg, it's like, it has really, really caused a huge amount of I don't even know the word, just chaos, wondering what's going to happen. So I don't know, like I'll put it out to you guys. Like what are some of your thoughts going into it about all the stuff that this does in Washington and how this looks through the election? Just let's go from there.
One of the things I think bears pointing out is that many Supreme Court decisions are unanimous. Historically, between 32 and 52% of the decisions in any given year are unanimous decisions. The court itself is not really a political instrument. And of the remainder decisions, most are actually decided on something like 7-2 splits. We really only give attention to the 5-4 splits because those are the ones that people are finding controversial. And it also bears noting that Ginsburg had a tremendous close relationship with a very conservative judge. And I find that admirable and something we should emulate. And I wish people would remember it more.
Yeah, no, I agree. But like, even then, it's like I think about so many of the things that have happened. Like, where is this going to go, though? I mean, because what a lot of people are afraid of is, and I mean, it's the thing I look forward to, is if we get not even a conservative judge. Because I mean, what a lot of people don't understand with a conservative judge is that it's not really so much that they care a lot about all the things that us traditional conservatives care about. What they care about is a traditional view of the Constitution and applying it in the way that it was written. Not, I mean, to Ginsburg credit, she had more of a stance of being an advocate judge, more of viewing it as more of a living document, something that can change with the time, something that as the culture shifts, the Constitution should shift with it. And it's just, that's been something that she pushed for a long time. Her leaving, and like, she was probably the most left-leaning in that respect of anybody on the courts, and now she could be replaced with somebody equally right-leaning on an already stacked court. And it's like, that could undo so much of this last progressive era. And I mean, yeah, I'm not going to pretend, I'm a conservative, so yay. But I can understand why so many of them are angry about that. But I mean, the reactions have been things that just absolutely blew my mind. In one of the chats on our Discord, I think Kristine, you were in that chat. I think there were several other people, but showing like some of the things that people were saying. Like the one that was craziest to me, the craziest thing that I heard said was somebody on Twitter, and got a lot of reactions for this, but just screaming "F you, F you, F you," Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, just absolutely pissed off at Ruth Bader Ginsburg for dying now instead of retiring during the Obama administration. And it's like, okay, like I felt guilty about a second of feeling a sense of opportunity, but not actually cursing her death for dying wrong, and it's like that was just absolutely crazy to me that she's getting so much hate from the left when she's got this legacy of protecting them. Now, I get why there could be frustration, but like that sort of indecency really got to me, because I'm like, how can people be so upset with somebody who was on their side for so many years, who has this legacy for them, just because she died wrong? And it's like that, I don't know. But like as far as other implications, I don't know what what do you guys see going on?
Ian?
Well, I kind of wanted to backtrack a bit, because my first impression when I saw it on my Twitter trends was, first, I didn't believe it, because she's been in bad health for a long time. So I thought she was going to hang on, because I knew she wanted to. My second was, we're in for a nightmare.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, at least a third of the country is going to be furious. If they manage to nominate and confirm someone before the election, obviously a lot of the left-leaning people in the country will be furious. If they manage to block that, then obviously a lot of the right-leaning people will be furious. If they manage to nominate and confirm, and then President Trump loses the election and the Democrats take the Senate and they pack the court and they add senators, I just think there's so many bad things that could happen because of this.
No, I feel bad, because it's like the impending sense of doom going over the entire nation every time there's any piece of news. It's like I laugh only outwardly, but it's like, yeah, like you're right. No matter what happens, a lot of people are going to be upset. And it's like, me living over here in my nice conservative fantasy, that, well, if Trump is able to get reelected, and if the Senate gets even more red, and if we're able to get that senator, then they can just pass good legislation and get rid of all the bad stuff, and then the world will be happy and unicorns and nice little smiling narwhals. That's Kristine's thing. But something's going to go wrong in this picture. Something's not going to go the way that we see, and I don't know. It really is getting a little bit scary. I mean, not for me. I live in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. Nobody's going to bother me. But it's like a lot of the rest of the country. Like this could be a thing. I really, really hope that after this election, things do calm down, whichever way it goes. Now, I did see something funny about how, maybe Trump should just go 4D chess and appoint Biden as the new Supreme Court justice. Because then that'll force the left to absolutely destroy him in every way, shape possible, and then he'll have to go back and try to win after that. So he might just do it. You don't know. You can't really count it out.
Interesting pick.
But
I would like to see if Ocasio-Cortez brings up impeachment articles.
Oh yeah, the impeachment. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, then they're trying the whole impeachment angle, and it's like, you really want Trump to win by a landslide. I feel that, like, a lot of the things that they're trying to do, it's like you guys are trying so hard to come up with tactics just to get in the way of these things, and it's
Schumer and Pelosi have signed aboard with that idea.
Yeah.
But the former chief of staff, Obama's former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, said that was not the way to go. He said, "I reject that politics. That is what is corrosive to our political system." And I have to agree, although that is not the craziest thing I've seen out there. I've seen calls by professors at universities for assassinations. I have personal friends who have called
there was the
war.
lady who mailed rice, or tried to mail rice into President.
Oh, so we know who that is.
This is not.
Yeah, they arrested her.
I think they arrested her.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't know if they'd arrested her or not.
I mean, obviously it was a clumsy failure, but the fact that someone actually acted on that is really bad.
Yeah. No, and it was, because like I shared that somebody had tried it, and it was sort of like, how can you be disturbed by something and not surprised? You know?
But it makes me very sad, and my heart hurts to think that, people I know and care about think that as conservatives, what we want is the handmaid's tale for them and worse. And that they're willing to go to any length to stop that. And actually, I'd like to do a future podcast, Ian, talking about what I've experienced here in this community. About I've told you about my father being attacked. My neighbor has suffered $25,000 in damage from vandalism from his home, and he's not the only one. And it's absolutely crazy. And we should talk about this. What people are doing in ordinary middle America to each other because of the fear that they're feeling and the anxiety that they're feeling about our political system that's really being whipped up by the media and by our political leaders who are really setting people against each other.
Well, even then, like I have a very good liberal friend who his biggest thing that he talks about is not a lot of the normal things you talk about. It's actually Ian McCullough. He's on Quora, but he talks about voter reform, and he lines out really, really good arguments for the polarization we're dealing with. It's not some vast culture divide. I mean, it's growing into one, but a lot of very simple reforms would eliminate a lot of the need for why things are getting so polarized. It's sort of like they talk about systemic racism and systemic this and systemic that. There are systems that build upon each other that are bad. But most of them are not so nefarious. Most of them are not so evil. Most of them are just incompetent. That it's like people did not think 50 years ahead of time how this would go. And it's like he makes very good arguments. And like I said, this is a really good friend, Democrat, liberal. And he makes really good arguments for how if we were just to roll back a couple of policies that seem like good ideas at the time with how we vote, then that could solve a lot of these issues dealing with how partisan the divides are getting. But
well, that sounds like something we'll have to talk about in the future, John, because
because it does look like
hour now.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay, so that's enough. Like we'll talk about RGB in. I'm sure that it's going to come up in the future. But gosh, an hour. Thank you guys so much. But you're right. We all do have to get on to life and sleep. But I do like I just want to go ahead and start us off with like closing and everything. Ian, Kristine, thank you guys so much for doing this. This is just like the coolest thing that I've ever seen just flower out of War Elephant. Getting to talk about these cool things that people are sharing, getting to have people from the community to talk about it. I can't wait to see future episodes. I'm not going to be involved in all of them. It's for everybody watching this. It's like this is their show. This is their show, and I'm going to be on it from time to time. But I can't wait to see the things that come out of this. I can't wait to see where it grows. Ian, you're doing such a great job of organizing it and getting it started. Kristine, keeping everything else involved with this ship sailing, thank you for that. But I thank you guys so much. I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I look forward to everything else you guys are doing. Now, I think that there were some other things that you guys had to plug. I can't remember, but I really wanted to make sure that message got said. Thank you both so much, and I can't wait to see this.
There was a question that came up, and I just want to answer it for one of our viewers. The cat that you guys were seeing, that is Zachy Bass. And I don't know if you can hear him barking, but my Labrador Retriever, Micah, is having a massive anxiety attack because he's locked out of this room now. So he'll probably appear on a future podcast. Ian?
Well, I wanted to thank Jon, of course, for coming on our first official episode of Editor's Pick. Thanks, of course, to Kristine and to our viewers who were very civil, even in our disagreement. I was watching the chat and conversing with you guys. I thought that was great, and I hope you show up. Our plan is to do a weekly podcast, at least. If we get more staff, we might increase it, but I'm actually involved in 2 other podcasts, guesting on at least 2 others regularly every month. So there's limited in terms of time for both me, and Kristine has a lot of work and stuff that she's involved in too as chief editor and her own life. So right now it's weekly. And as I said, we're very interested in having lots of different people on, as long as you're willing to abide by the 3 R's. That's respectful, researched, and relaxed. If you can do those 3 things, then you're golden with us. So thank you again for tuning in to Editor's Pick, official episode 1, and we'll see you next week.